Hello and welcome. My name is Seth, this is Sweet Chariot, and we are back to making this bow here. Part 3. Hello new people, hello people in the future. I hope this bow survives. We're going to do a series where I've done a whole bunch of work today, and maybe I should have filmed it and edited it together, but that takes too long. So instead, I've done a whole bunch of shaving, and now we're going to talk about it. Last video was the sapwood, which I've more or less finished up now. It was like half an hour just working on this knot right here. It was a huge bit of sapwood. In fact, you can probably still see some pretty decent lumps down here, and on the other one as well. Yeah, I've been chiseling away nice and gently, and I've remembered something about this particular batch of yew that I've got. Because it's outdoor cured, I was incredibly lucky to find it. I don't know if you can get a cross section down there, or if you'll even see it. No, of course, no, you won't. You won't see it at all. Cool, no, you can see it here. Yeah, outdoor cured, and it effectively had started to rot. I guess this is the first stages of rot setting in. This black mark between the heartwood and the sapwood here. I guess. I think I've had pieces from this tree that didn't have it. A couple of the first bows I made came out real clean. But I've had, both those ones that I've touted before in this series, they both have this black marking, and they both work absolutely fine. If they're as fast as they could be, I don't know. I need to do some proper speed testing on all of them with the right weighted arrows, now they're at proper draw lengths. But you can only assume that properly cured yew will be faster than stuff that is cured partially outside in the elements, exposed to fungus. And of course the fungus will stop now because it's dried out, it's out of the elements, and it won't survive. That will cease, and because we're going to apply heat to it and oils and things like that, so it's going to be no good for the fungal life in the wood. So you should be able, that should stop it. Only time will tell. But something this black mold does do is give you a good indicator of when your sapwood's ending. Remembering, on this one, the first stage I wanted to do was the sapwood. Get this piece here, this particular piece. The sapwood isn't very deep. We haven't got to take very much away at all. But this one here, the sapwood was like, I don't know, three times as deep as that. So the first thing I wanted to do, well, because with some bows you can end up like with the bark on the front almost. It will crack off, of course, but your amount of sapwood could be so perfect that you could retain the cambium layer, this sort of pithy bit between the bark and the sapwood, because you don't need to take any sapwood away. You might argue that that's an easier bow. You can just focus on the heartwood then, which is what we're here to talk about here. Of course, first stage with this particular piece was get the sapwood out of the way, and aside from shaping it down, first thing to do was just to tidy it all up and start shaping it down in this taper sort of shape. Roughly 1.5 to 2 inches at the base here, depending on what your piece of wood will give you. Struggling a little bit here with the handle as a dip. I don't want to remove any more material here, really. Don't want to make it any thinner, but then again there's the option of adding material on the back. So but this is some of the things that we can start considering at this point. We need to consider at this point, I should say. So I can see just here, a bit of black coming through, so I've probably gone a little bit too deep on the sapwood here. That's okay, it's only a small section, and the area around it I will now be more mindful of taking material away. I was trying to match these two sides up as best I could. Yes, that is the sapwood. That was last video. It's been a lot of time just getting these down. That's the best way to describe it. the material would have ramped up. So you can't just cut it off, as I spoke about in the last video, because it will create an area that has no structure whatsoever, and it will just snap as soon as it's under pressure. So you have to sort of pull the growth rings away from the knot, and then you end up with the layer of sapwood that you want. But slowly but surely, it just sinks down, sinks down, sinks down. And yeah, it's about the same size as these knots here are about the same size as what they were when they started. You know, you haven't got this great big orange hole of your heartwood sticking through your sapwood. Here's the idea. I think we're now going to use that trick of, you know, looking at the black mold. I haven't burned through anywhere. This is the outer stuff. So there is still more sapwood that can come away from here, I believe. But sort of as you're doing that, you're sort of bringing down the shape of the whole thing. Can now start to see the bow appear. This limb's a whole different story. Look how clean that is. Got a bit of a knot here and here. And straight as well. Let's see if I can show you without knocking everything over. Lovely straight-ish limb. Now that I've done some work to this belly, so let's talk about the belly. So you've taken away sapwood to the point where it maybe not be perfect, but you've got a nice even layer across the whole limb. Yeah, because in that regard, you haven't got to worry about leaving extra material, whereas with the heartwood, you do. The heartwood is going to be, you know, what makes up the depth of it all, because it's just a layer of sapwood over the top of it. So what was I wanted to talk about? Yeah, picking somewhere, because we're gonna well, reason I wanted to knock this video out nice and quick is because this is now ready to excuse me, I just had a what was it, honey and lemon. It's giving me a gag throat. Yes, now I'm ready to straighten a limb out. I think I've taken away a decent enough amount of material. You know, could probably do a little bit more, but we are now into the point of trying to match this limb to this limb, and having this limb in the position that it is going to be in is going to help in the sculpting process of making sure that, you know what, so this limb matches this limb and that they both correspond to the handle. So that's in that orientation, and you know, your front set, back set orientation. But the first one we got to set is this twist, this kink off to the left, and yes, bellies matching up with one another. This is where I come back to talking about this chunk of material missing in the handle. If I want to add material to the back of this piece, we're going to be left with a cavity there. And so, you know, to flatten it all down, we're going to lose some material. I've tried to, you know, start, you know, obviously to make this bit of limb work, you've got to take a bit of sapwood away. So, you know, ramped it up and left a bit more around the handle just to help with the thickness there. If I go ahead and start flattening that down, which I won't do yet, do the limbs first. Yeah, we're going to be left with a cavity there. We are going to come in to an inch, so it is a less of a cavity than what we see there. So it's not the end of the world, but is something that the split, the bad split on this particular piece has left us dealing with. Yeah. It might be enough to not bend in the middle. Well, like I say, we're going to come thinner, so I am tempted to reinforce it. Yeah, so this limb, heartwood, is what I should talk about. Just a little bit more tidy enough we can do before, of course, bending a piece of wood like this. The more material you can take away, the better. It's going to be easier to do it. So, what I mentioned, matching this limb to this limb and also the handle. Once you've had your considerations about what you're going to do, so if you're going to add more material or not, or shape it up as it is, and whether it's going to bend or snap in the middle, if you're trying to do cutouts as well, that's something else to consider. Yeah, we're going to need to sort of make sure everything's on the same plane down the limb. And see, obviously this is going to start creating our bending surface where we're going to tiller away from and get it to bend exactly the way we want to. And of course that's, you know, that starts with a nice flat belly, nice flat surface. And of course having your string line work properly without the bow twisting and things like this, that limb needs to match that limb. Yeah, so on this bow, the handle area, which I should probably remark, you do this a lot, and just it's a reference point which will disappear because you're going to remove material sort of around the handle as you're trying to get the limbs to match each other. So, center of the bow, obviously measure the length of the thing, divide that in half, and then measure 4 inches either side. You can imagine a piece of wood getting glued on the back there, and then shaped down into the wedge. Or we could start even drawing the wedge on it now, and how we could potentially get it to run. But yeah, these knots are a concern. It is actually floor tillering. We are bending ever so slightly. I'm not hearing any cracks, which is a good sign. Sorry if you can't see that in the camera, you're just gonna have to believe me. Yeah, this limb is thinner than this one is now. Look how clean and orderly that is. How fun that'll be to sculpt down into a pretty looking limb. But if I can make this limb work, it should look not all too dissimilar to that one down there. Just a few lumps on the front. So yeah, sorry. Back to marking out the middle again. Which is my good limbs. This one, isn't it? Yes, this limb and the handle match up real nice. If you're just looking at this piece of wood, it is more or less straight. You could probably get a bit more straightness out of it just by sort of choosing which side you carve to. You know, if you anchor the handle as it is, and then just, you know, come to terms with your string line being there, you could shape it down as it is and know that you're going to have to pull the limb across, or you could try and sort of blend the handle to this limb and make that disappear without, you know, without having to bend this limb. That's a hard one to describe. You've got to, you know, using, well, something else to mention. To get to this point, I've barely used the measuring tool. Find the middle, and these points, yes, but it's your eye. You've got to get in. You'll see, you can see when something's not right. Once again, use my thumb as a measurement. So I know that is thicker than the minimum that we're going to want to end up with. Yeah, we're pretty much there now. I'll put temporary knocks. Once it's straightened up, I'll put temporary knocks in here. And then we've got a bit more material left over. Just shape it down and make it all pointy and pretty and nice and still strong and working. Right, so yeah, sorry. Heartwood. These are my issues in my Heartwood. As well as that twist. Yeah, flattened off this one fairly well because there's still a few gouges in there, a few gashes and rip-ups. So we're definitely at a point of needing to use the rasp, the lovely rasp, because your knife won't go through that cleanly. And we're at the point now, if you rip up with the knife, it could be game over for the stave. So you can do it with the knife. You're very sharp, very gentle, slow. You know, but no, I won't demonstrate it. You can cut through these knots. You know, if your piece is nice and secure as well. But I don't think it's worth risking it, is it? It's an area that will doubtless cause you problems. Ooh, get back on there, you bastard. And a little bit here as well. This one is more or less flat-ish. Like I say, I'm keen to get it into the jig and get it shaped. Of course, as you're working through your knots, you're trying to achieve the taper, the 1/4 inch to 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch up here. depending on your design and your power choices and things. If you set the size here and you set the size here, and then you use that eye to taper everything as it needs to be, you will inevitably end up with a bow, as in the the process of the wood bending, because this will just, there's no way that this can't be the thinnest, bendiest bit, and then once that's moved and put pressure on the bit next to it, that's the next bendiest bit. Whereas if you're thin, thick, and then thin, you'll start to bend, and this will be the next bendiest bit down here, which you don't want. You want the thing to have a nice even bend across the whole thing. And this is where the taper comes in. So yeah, you anchor yourself. It needn't be those measurements. You could try different measurements, but it has to be bigger down there than it is up here. Yeah, same with your English longbow. Even though it's a smaller taper, much more of a pole, the taper is still there on all dimensions as well. This dimension and this dimension, and it guarantees it in both dimensions. Cool. So looking down there, that's more or less flat and lined up to about here. So now it just becomes very tricky to see where the taper runs in relation to each other. Yeah, because this isn't just bent off and straight. This bends this way, then it bends to the left, and then it might bend back to the right a little bit again. So if I correct this bend, I'm going to have to correct that bend and the other bend down at the end. But that then shows you exactly where the limb is going to be, and you can look down the thing and know that you've sculpted right. Right. I'm going to take a little bit away here. So obviously when it's in its twisted orientation, you can still figure it out. You can plan your bends, where the thing is going to move to. Look around, because you're trying to achieve the same dimensions as what you've got down there, but it's just kinked and in a different direction. Yeah, that's when you just get good at. It's hard to visualize. But of course, once you've done it a few times, it becomes easier to visualize. You sort of believe that you can do it. You become familiar with the wood and what it can do. I found it to be quite versatile, and I've not even used steam. Used the heat gun mainly. I need to get some practice in with using steam. Definitely with the tips. There's no excuse then. You've got just a small amount of area that you can easily put across a pot. When you're dealing with something like this, there's going to be numerous little bends that you're going to want to do. A way to do that is to put it in a box and then steam it. Steam the whole thing and then bend it into the orientation that you want. But that takes another piece of kit, which I don't have at the minute. That is definitely a technique. So yeah, what I'll do is shape it down as best I can in this form, and then start jigging him. Because we're going to jig it here first. Yeah, this one. It's mostly just on the other side of the handle. It does its first bend. We've got to be careful working up at the top of the limb here that we don't go too thin, because it is actually, it's quite thick down here still. Not a terrible issue. You never know where it could quite land you. Like I say, you're trying to stick to that taper. We should be doing the tips first, but because I'm trying to get the bend done in this area, I know vaguely what sort of size makes what. Makes something that works. Start up here and then be fairly confident I'm not going to cause any problems. Yeah, it's this thin point here. I'm going to have to take all this down. Like I say, I'm not really seeing any of that blackness coming through yet. Now we're onto the rasp. We should get fair warning of it as well. So obviously it's only doing what, half a millimeter? No, it's gonna be like a half a mil, hasn't it? Scrape. We're probably about ready to move to the, no, not quite. On the sapwood, we're about ready to move to the card scraper, I think. Well, I can't find it, I'm gonna have to make another one. It's supposed to be Heartwood, Seth. We're talking about Heartwood. Yeah, same as in the sapwood. Except these are getting squished instead of stretched. So it's much less of a concern. Of course, they do create a disorderly grain structure, which could be your downfall. That would create a shallow area that you hadn't considered, a shallow area in either your heartwood or your sapwood. A little cavity maybe in there that you didn't know about. Yeah, friend through all of this is the rasp. Like I say, it gets horribly gummed up with the sapwood because it's so fibrous. What do? I get my little tile scraper, gnarly little tile file. My bubble rasp, I call that. It does very similar to what the rasp does, but just with scraping. So I found that really good with shaping handles and whatnot. Or hard to reach areas, but the concept's the same. It's your next cutting tool. It's not a blade. That's a whole bunch of tiny little blades. Yeah, a large blade will get caught in those knots. So you just need something to rip through that. Certain type of rock, maybe, might do it. That's probably what they used in the first place to deal with this problem. I don't know. I'm no historian. What I do know is they made this bow for a long time. Maybe not out of this wood, probably out of this wood as well. And the evolution of tools is quite quick. They find a way. We're clever like that, humans. Still looking good. Back to the heartwood. Yeah, go thinner here. But am I at a point? And then reference back. You've got a straight limb, straight handle. Use some material here, I think. And try and just visualize that limb moving back and the position it's going to hold when it does. And the piece of view here has given me marker points for that. See how the sapwood disappears? Same here. We're starting to look like a boo. Flat. Flat is what we're after. Slowly but surely. Yeah, this is where it slows right down. It'll take a couple of hours to, thin a stave down to something that looks like a blank. Which is probably where we're at now. My first video was log to blank and didn't really make it. It's definitely taken a few hours to get to what I call a blank with this particular piece of wood because of these bastard knots, but we're looking okay. You get those little storms. I call them like Jupiter storms. The eye of Jupiter. That storm on Jupiter that just keeps on going. So that is where the bow will let go. Here. Probably not here, because we're right up at the tip, but this area here, I'm a wee bit concerned about. It's not too bad. That little knot in the middle there has appeared. I thought I just had these two here. These holes could well go the whole way through the bow. Don't know how these are going to open up because I need to start creating this taper now. Start creating the taper from the tip, work it back up. Try and take away as much material from your knots as possible, but yeah, that's a hard one to call, as it's tied in with how you tiller this thing, and you know the feel for the wood. The wood will let you know if it will do it quite quickly. Short, sharp, and quickly it will let you know. So yeah, next step with this one, I think I've thinned it down enough to heat it up and try and pull it across. And once it's pulled across, I can keep taking material away. I want to do that before I do any more on this limb, because I don't think this limb is going to cause me any problems. But you never know. Yeah, I've had a whole bunch of bows that have one good limb. In fact, a fella bought a handful of broken bows off of me, so he could have a go at joining them together. And so the good limbs, the ones that are left over. So if you can put them back together, if you get several of them, and then you're a good joiner. 2 good limbs. But no, we're going to make this one work. God damn it, I'm going to make this one work. It's going to be tricky though. This one's so tidy. Try and bend that flat, bend that straight. Yeah, thanks for joining me, everyone. Yeah, I'll get this thing up and running as soon as possible. I'm going to heat this up now, in fact. Maybe do a little short of me doing that. Yeah, stay tuned. With any luck, this bow will be working, and I'll probably put it up for sale, to be honest. I've got one up for sale. No, there's more up for sale. Agent, one of my latest ones, which are, you know, these are now working better than the first ones that I made. The first ones worked, these ones now work competitively. You know, front set as they are, storing more energy. So, need to get Hoodoo, I think I'm going to call the home guard flat bow that I've made. I think that one's called Hoodoo. Saw that on a Outdoor Boys video and it stuck in my head as an ancient thing. I want to show you this tiller if I can. We are now starting to floor tiller. Bench tiller, I should say. Where are we bending? Not safe. I think we're bending. That's reasonably well spread. But it does look like it's going to the middle of the limb, which is unsurprising because the tip isn't thinned down at all yet. But cool. Let me get this in the jig, get some heat, and then we're on to the next bit. Nice. Thanks again, everyone. I'll see you in the next one.